Hi guys. So Nigel Farage, who used to be on LBC, was actually invited back onto LBC, but in this case, he was a guest. He was answering questions, not asking questions. Now, in this interview, he's going to explain how the EU offer is unacceptable, and he'll also say how the impact of Brexit in January will be tiny. Yes, tiny.
But I am actually nervous about the state of the negotiation now, and I am concerned going forward because everything's been multiplied by COVID. And so I am concerned about our country going forward. That is a legitimate concern.
Any disruption caused by Brexit will be tiny, I mean, absolutely tiny, compared to the disruption to our lives that's been caused by COVID.
Okay, so tiny when compared to COVID. Well, COVID is short term, Brexit is long term. So maybe technically he's right that you won't be locked in your home, you won't be forced to wear a mask because of Brexit, but the long term effects will be worse than COVID. And that's not just me talking, that's the Central Bank of England talking.
And the way the government has dealt with it. Look, we know that at the end of the day, the European Union are battling to preserve their political empire, all right?
Why is this Andrew Castle not calling out Nigel Farage here? What empire? Can you explain how it's an empire, Nigel? He's just allowing him to speak and not challenging him on anything he has said so far. First of all, he allowed him to say that it will be tiny. How do you know it will be tiny, Nigel? Can you explain how it will be tiny? Do you not think it will have a long-term impact? And then once again, not calling him out on this. This is ridiculous.
And we've made some mistakes. Signing up to that withdrawal agreement was a very big mistake.
Okay, sorry to be interrupting him after every few seconds, but what was the alternative, Nigel Farage? See, Nigel Farage is the type of person who, at a football match, will stand on the sideline and shout insults to the referee, to the players, telling them that they're not doing the right job, telling them they should go in this direction or that direction, while he would be incapable of actually getting up and playing that football game. Nigel Farage would not be a negotiator. Nigel Farage could not run the country. He's never intended to do that. He's sniping from the sides. That is his job. That is his ability. Now, he's of course, it's easy for him to criticize, why did you sign up to the withdrawal agreement? The withdrawal agreement was necessary for the UK's position after Brexit. And of course, the position of Northern Ireland. But Nigel Farage doesn't care about Northern Ireland. Doesn't care about the Union. Cares about Brexit. And unfortunately, many Brexiteers don't care about the Union either. They care more about Brexit.
Boris Johnson's got the chance here to set us on a completely different course, a course where we're in charge of our own rules and regulations, where we can actually become competitive. And if we do that, we'll be a magnet for massive global investment.
This is about reducing taxes, reducing standards, reducing regulations. This is not about improving standards, improving regulations, protecting workers. This is about stripping all that away. Nigel Farage wants to turn the UK into basically a tax haven. He doesn't care about ordinary people. He never has, he never will. He cares about people who fund him, who fund the Brexit Party. The Aaron Banks of this world. Billionaires. People with large tracts of land. People who are, who don't want to get involved in politics, but are happy to write checks for someone who is getting involved in politics and doing their bidding for them. Now, something interesting that Nigel has said here is that, we don't want to sign up to European standards, or we don't want them telling us what to do. This is a ridiculous point of an argument to make. This is a ridiculous argument. Let's say, for example, I make televisions. Okay, and I want to sell those televisions in the United States. Well, the United States have a different voltage than we in Europe have. For example, in the United States, TVs run at 110 volts, while here in Europe they run at 220 volts. So if I want to sell my TVs in the United States, I have to accept the US standards. Now, if I say I'm not going to accept those standards, then there's going to be a problem. When the TVs arrive in the United States, they won't work, or they will be impounded because they don't match the standard required. This is exactly the same thing as what's happening at the moment. The EU said, if you want to have access to the single market, you need to respect certain standards. Now, the Brexiteers would say, but our standards are higher. That's not the point. The point is you need to recognize certain standards. You need to follow those standards. And if you do, then you can access the single market. Once again, Brexiteers don't have a problem with following US standards. They don't have a problem with following Australian standards, but they seem to have a problem with following European standards. Why is that?
Well, and there may be some short-term disruption. When you move house, the short-term disruption, any big change in life brings short-term disruption. But
move house? No, Nigel, this is basically burning down your house and then hoping a new house arrives in the post or something like that. No, actually, it's better than that. It's actually burning down your house and then asking Boris Johnson to build you a new one and hoping that Boris Johnson will build you a new house. Trusting Boris Johnson will build you a new house. Trusting that Michael Gove will build you a new house. That's what it's like. Not moving house, Nigel. It's like burning down your old house and hoping Boris Johnson will build you a new one. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't trust Boris Johnson to build anything.
I am personally. And don't forget, I started this campaign 30 years ago.
Yes, and you're doing very well financially out of all of this, aren't you, Nigel?
And a lot of people laughed at me, but I now hear the things that I was saying back in the early 90s that are now mainstream narrative. And I believe more than ever that we've got to do this. We've got to break free.
I understand, and I know that these views of yours are sincerely held, and we've talked many times. Fishing is a symbol of sovereignty to Brexiteers, of course, and it's very, very important. I would never be somebody, especially the son of a master fishmonger in the old days, based in Kent, by the way, Edenbridge. I would certainly never say throw fishing away. It's a symbol of sovereignty to Brexiteers. Are we seriously? Have we seriously got Royal Naval vessels preparing to patrol the Channel with our French neighbours coming over and trying to nick our fish? I mean, is this really what it comes to? Unbelievably childish, really, is it not?
That's what Norway does every day. It's what Iceland do every day. Sovereign countries protect their own resources, and there is a massive problem here with fishing. I keep being told.
Okay, but the problem with a lot of this has been sold off. I've talked about this before. The rights to fishing have been sold off to large corporations, sold off to very rich individuals. This is not about protecting the environment. This is not about protecting small fishing communities. It never was. It's about protecting certain individuals who donate to the Conservative Party, who donate to the Brexit Party, and want more access, or they want to limit the access that non them who isn't them have access to UK waters. UK waters belong to the UK. That is not being disputed. It's the right to fish in those waters. That's the problem here. And Brexiteers are trying to convince people that it's about protecting fishing communities, it's about ordinary fishermen. No, it's not. It never has been. Most of the fishermen are working for private companies or private individuals who own the rights to fish in UK waters. Now, as I've said in other videos, this issue is much more complicated than the likes of Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg or anyone else on the Brexit side will explain. It is an extremely complicated issue. It requires cooperation between the EU and the UK and other nations. Because, as I've said before, fish don't stay in one place. Fish don't have passports. Fish don't understand or recognize international borders. They start off in one area, they grow, they migrate, they change direction. In one part of the year, they're in one part of the world. In another part of the year, they're in another part of the world. And this is a complicated issue. And if you want to maintain fish stocks, then you need to cooperate with the European Union and you need to manage it. It's not just about catching the fish. It's also about protecting the environment, protecting those stocks. And there has to be massive cooperation. Now, the problem is that the likes of Nigel Farage would say, we're able to turn ourselves into a hermit nation. We don't need to access the EU. We don't need anything to do with the EU. He, of course, was talking about, until recently, a clean break Brexit. The idea that, we don't even need a deal. We can just go. We can pull up the drawbridge. These are our fish. This is our water. This is our land. We don't even need to import. We don't even need to export. And then, of course, he turns around and says, well, when we strip away all our regulations and our controls, we can turn ourselves into a tax haven where people will flock to do what? To invest in. I wouldn't actually call it investing. I'd call it dumping cash. And of course, when you strip away regulations, when you strip away taxation, who's going to suffer? The ordinary people are going to suffer because they're not going to have the services that they require. Welfare standards will be eliminated. And this is not just Project Fear. This is the type of thing that Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage have been pushing since the beginning. So, as Nigel said, the disruption will be tiny. Perhaps, I wouldn't say tiny, perhaps it will be less. And of course, it will be different to COVID, but it will be long term. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?